Welcome to the Great Work of Your Life interview series produced by Revealing Genius. Our guest today is the CEO of The Photo Managers, found at thephotomanagers.com. A Wesleyan alum, her passion project and life's work for the past 15 years is about preserving memories and legacy storytelling. Her business focuses on digitizing cherished memories to ensure they're passed down for generations, and her global network turns scattered photo collections into curated legacies. What's really interesting about the organization she founded is she's launched an advocacy program to work with families in hospice. And she works with families in hospice and families who have a loved one who are looking at end of life care to ensure that these stories are not only preserved, but celebrated. So please welcome Miss Cathi Nelson.
Thank you, Mary. I'm thrilled to be here today. This is a wonderful, wonderful topic.
Thank you. And I just love your commitment. Yeah, it's more than a business for you from us chatting offline prior to this. It's almost like it's a movement and a mission. Yes, for you.
Yes, absolutely. And not just me, but the members of the professional photo organizers that I have helped support throughout the past 15 years and created a business model that never existed because you didn't think when we were just printing photos at our 1 hour photo lab, you never dreamed that you would need to hire somebody to help you organize and manage all of those assets. But now we know that they are. As that group has gone into the world working with families, this whole piece of legacy storytelling has become a growing passion for many of our members and for us as well.
Well, I know the audience is absolutely going to love it. So let's dive in, shall we?
Yes.
So, Cathi Nelson, first two questions go together. What gives you energy and what drains your energy?
What gives me energy is a great question. I am energized by ideas. I'm very curious, and I think of myself as a lifelong learner. And so meeting somebody like you gives me energy, you know, a person that I didn't know about your work and the fascinating work that you're doing. And then I woke up this morning all excited with a lot of energy because I'm going to learn something new and I'm going to be talking to new people. So I think I'm just by nature I always joked also that I'm like an idea minute person. Ideas come easily to me. It's not hard for me. I can come up with 1,000 ideas in the shower. What drains me though is then probably the process of weeding through all those ideas and then narrowing down to focusing on the ones that really matter.
Yeah, makes sense. And you're a creator. I mean, I see you as a creator, which is an excellent segue into the next two questions. And that is, what do you love the most about your work? And what do you like least?
Yeah. What I love most, and I've thought about this a lot over the years, is that at the end of the day, I've said it when I lay my head on the pillow, I am so thankful that an idea that I had has turned into an opportunity for hundreds, almost thousands actually, of mostly women, but more and more men, to actually make a living doing meaningful work. You know, I kind of took an idea of my own where I realized that people would compensate and pay me to help them organize their photos, their videos, their home movies, their meaningful keepsake items. And when I say organize, I always say organization's like watching paint dry. I mean, there's nothing sexy about the idea of organizing. It's that I believe that we are a people of stories, as we're wired to tell stories as humans. And the way that we do that once a camera was put in our hands is visual storytelling. And all of those stories and those videos and photos have meaning to them. But if they're a mess, then you know, they're just kind of getting lost to history. And so by starting a business and then teaching others how to have a business like this, I've allowed a lot of people to create meaningful jobs. And I get a lot of thank you notes from people that this has become their life work based on an idea that I had.
Yes. And if I had 5 minutes with you, Cathi, this next question is the one that I would ask you because you have a fascinating background. You're a Wesleyan grad. You have a master's in humanities. You've done some really interesting things, which I'd love for you to share with the audience because this has been the past 15 years of your life, but you've done quite a number of things. So the question is this: when did you realize you knew what the great work of your life was?
That's a great question as well. I now realize there's a thread that runs through our lives that we can't see. And I try and counsel a lot of younger professionals about this, that, I have the wisdom now to look back, but I look back and I realized when I graduated from college, I used to say I wanted to write and produce documentaries. That's what I wanted to do for a living. But I got a job at a local TV station and I got a job in sales selling advertising. So I had no idea that you don't actually ever leave the sales environment to go back into the storytelling production side, because financially I needed to make money and I suddenly started making good money. But I loved helping businesses tell their stories through advertising and marketing. And then when I quit that and my son was born, and I learned about scrapbooking and helping people tell their stories using their photos. I got very involved in that. But I also traveled around the world in my late 20s, and I wrote and produced a documentary called Women and Children of the World, which was just my own life experience of taking photos and stories and putting them together in a way that you can't that today would be so easy to do, but then it was really difficult. And so all of that, actually, that passion for stories and storytelling goes way back in my life. It's so that thread has been there for a really long time. I just didn't know that I was going to that I kept following the thread in different ways. Does that make
It's great
sense?
advice. Absolutely. Makes a ton of sense. A ton of sense. It's very inspirational. You're a creator, you're a storyteller. You always have been. And now you're just kind of realizing that it's all come together. Like this is the tip of the spear, this business, this mission, this movement that you've started, which is really exciting. Did you
And
ever have doubts?
not to change, but one, I do want to call it one. When I was pretty discouraged though, 15 years ago, and I enrolled in a program at Harvard Seminary called Women's Leadership Institute, run by an amazing theologian, feminist theologian, M.T. Winter. But I remember I was feeling like this whole thing with photos and stories, did anybody care? And she was so passionate about it. She looked at me and said, Cathi, we are a people of stories. She gave me that language. Human beings are wired to tell stories. You do not discount this vision that you have. Go forward with it. So it was also really helpful to have people along the way kind of shepherd me a little bit and seeing something that I didn't see in myself.
Interesting. So you had doubts and what I call freak out moments. Yes.
Oh,
Tell us a
many.
little bit about that.
I still have them. I could have them on a regular basis. Yeah. Well, absolutely. I think I always said I didn't wake up one morning saying, today, I think I'll create a worldwide internet, association of professional photo managers. It was really a lot of, it was just taking one step at a time. I started my own business doing this. And then people started saying, can you teach me how to do it? And that was a whole nother mind shift. It was like, well, yeah. And then I started teaching them. And then I started thinking, maybe then I had 50 people I was teaching. And I thought, well, how do I do more than that? And then I realized we needed a certification, because suddenly people were, I was teaching people how to work with families' photos, but where was a code of ethics? We didn't have a code of ethics. And I realized, oh, we need a code. So I did have many, many doubts along the way, and I can still have not too many. I know that what we've done is phenomenal, but at the same time, am I doing the best job I can? Am I really empowering people the way I should? All of those kind of shoulds can get in the way.
Yes. If you could offer some advice, and I know that mentoring is important to you. We've talked about our mentors and how much they've meant to us. And I know that you proactively mentor, up and comers, rising stars, even peers. So how do you define success? If they asked you, how do you define success? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. Yeah, success is not, I mean, the most obvious thing I think in a culture, we think of success as financial. But to me, success is much more, are you doing the work of your heart in a way? And it may not be always in a paid employment and experience, right? Because that, we have to balance those things out. I'm not unrealistic. Like our members that join, they do have to make a living. I mean, it's not, you don't organize and manage a client's, it's meaningful work and it makes a difference in the person's life. But at the end of the day, you still have a mortgage to pay probably, and children you might want to put through college and things like that. So I don't want to discount the financial piece of it is really important. But to me, success is definitely more, am I living out my values? Am I walking the walk and talk that I say? When I make decisions, I do try to bring myself back to that. Am I making this decision out of my true values, or am I making this, how do I come back to my values and make sure that I'm making a decision based on my values? If I had $1 for every person who told me I should be a millionaire at this point with this idea, they don't get it. I mean, it's not that simple, and that's not what I've set out to do. And it can be frustrating sometimes because I can feel like I'm not any of that. I haven't graded this $1 million business. I haven't, and I can second guess myself, but then I realize, well, they're measuring me against a measurement out there in the culture of that isn't what I'm measuring myself against.
Yes. And we're playing our own game. Success is different for everyone, really. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Great advice. If you had to do it over again, what would that look like and why?
Hmm. I don't think I would do anything different. I really don't. I mean, I probably would have had more confidence earlier than I have. And you can still hear it even in my voice sometimes now. Even my coach still always tries to work with me on that. So I think I would have believed in myself a little bit more. I think I've always had this because I came into entrepreneurship later in my life, and I have felt like I've missed out like on training that other people had about finances, or I never sat in the boardroom with CFOs or all those things. I think I've second guessed myself a lot. I think I'd go and tell that younger version of myself that nobody has it all figured out. It's okay. You're it the just enjoy the journey and the process, and it's going to work out. Don't
Yeah,
second guess yourself so as much as you do.
exactly. You're not alone. I watched Dave Letterman last night interview Billie Eilish, and what an odd, interesting combination, a pairing. And they had the most profound conversation about imposter syndrome, where they
Oh,
both experienced it and they still experience it. Billie Eilish, I think, had 10 Grammys by the time she was 17. And of course, Dave Letterman, everybody knows Dave Letterman. He dedicated a wing to his alma mater. And there's actually it's carved outside, it's engraved. It says, "To all the C students, I dedicate this building." So you can even hear the imposter syndrome there,
and
so
one thing I did a talk at our conference. We do an annual educational conference, and last year, I think it was last year, I called it the Valley of Despair. I forget that it's the Curring Dunning effect. I'm not if I say it right, but the idea that we start out feeling competent a lot of times, and then but there's a moment when we go into what they call the Valley of Despair, and that's when most people quit. It's when suddenly we realize we don't know all that we thought we did. But the realization is that Valley of Despair it can be like every week. I mean, it's not like it's a one-time moment where you second guess yourself. And so I think that to recognize too, that's part of the process. And working through
yes,
that Valley of Despair and that imposter syndrome is all part of the process of growing. And it's
yes,
going to
yes,
come.
right, yes, and staying humble too,
Mhm.
uh, for sure. Um, so this question I'm dying to ask you. It's about your superpower. We call it 10,000 hours. Where do you think you've spent 10,000 hours mastering your craft, honing your superpower? What's your superpower, Cathi?
Gosh, that's a good. I'm a risk taker. I think on a test once I did, I'm called a quick start. In other words, which is probably that risk taker. I think my superpower is a willingness to take risks and try new things and think about new ideas and not I do take that risk. I do. I mean, as much as I do the imposter syndrome, I still can push I think it's a superpower. I'm not stuck in the details. I'm a big picture person, and it's helpful. I mean, because I can be around a lot of people who don't ever get started. I mean, it's amazing how many people will join to start this business, and then they get paralyzed by overthinking. And I don't have that. I don't get paralyzed by that as much. So I think it's a superpower. I have to temper
Definitely. Yes.
it.
And above your left shoulder is a sign that says everything is figure outable. So that makes a lot of sense where you're willing to jump in and go and you just trust that you're going to figure it out.
Well,
You're going to get there.
yeah, and that's Marie Forleo. That's her saying. She has a book. Everything is, but at the same time, you can't see it because it's smaller. But I also have Brene Brown. It's okay to be brave and afraid at the same time. I think they go like really well hand in hand. Like, yes, everything is figure outable. Like I can figure out how to read that, profit and loss statement. But at the same time, I'm terrified at this end, but I can be brave at the same time, right? And I think that tension is really something I can hold pretty well together.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Is there anything you wish you were better at?
Oh yeah. I wish I was better at focusing on what's really important. I do struggle with that, like in terms of, and that's the business from a business growth perspective. We were just kind of talking about that, right? I get excited by a lot of ideas. I'm getting better where, especially for my staff, that I'm willing to say, okay, just because I have a new idea, it doesn't mean we have to implement it. Where in the past, I think I was much more impulsive like that. There's an impulsivity in that ability to be this big picture thinker. So I'm working on taking a second breath, I guess is kind of like,
Yes.
we don't just jump into every new idea because it's confusing for the people who work for me. I think it's been confusing sometimes for our members and so that I'm working on that. It's something I wish I'm better at, but I'm getting better at it.
They say our greatest strength is our greatest weakness. Do you believe that? Because I mean, jumping right in, there's a strength to that. There's power in that, like jumping in and being brave and going for it and pushing forward. But at the same time, like you said, you might jump into too many things. And then, Sunday rolls around and you're like, oh my gosh, where'd the week go?
There's a little bit of whiplash that can happen.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Cathi just started, we were going down this path and then she had a new idea. Now we took a left and then wait a minute, I'm still, and I'm still like on I took a right and Kathy's already taken a left and that's can be tough.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. So what do you know, Cathi, about yourself to be absolutely true?
I care deeply about people. I believe that all human beings have a story to tell and that we are so much more alike than we are different. I in my heart of hearts, the world is becoming so polarized and we're kind of othering. And I just know we're not others. We are all, I really believe there's a unity in the universe and that though it feels scary sometimes that we're losing our way in that if I sit with a person, I will find common ground no matter who they are, whatever walk of life they come from. I believe that in my core of my being.
Yes.
So.
Beautifully said. Excellent. We have 3 more questions and a bonus question. So these 3 more questions. Next one is, what would people be surprised to know about you?
What would they be surprised? I have really been since the pandemic. I've been drawing a lot. I'm more of an illustrator and I'm filled volumes of books. It's kind of a form of Zen tangling meditation drawing, but I think people don't know that at all about me. And it's something that my husband knows because I do it at night at the end of the day. But I realized the other day I hoard like lots of colorful pens and I really get into color and doing things like that. And it's not something I talk about. I don't share it with anybody, but it's something that I'm going to try and explore a little bit more.
Yeah, sounds great. I was just reading about Albert Einstein, and he said that the theory of relativity came to him while he was playing the violin, that he was doing something artistic and creative, and that's when it got sorted in his mind. So,
and
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, the good news at this stage of my life, I don't care that it's not that great. Like I'm not showing people because I'm embarrassed. I don't need to show anybody, and I'm never going to like suddenly like have a show of my art or anything. I'm positive of that. And I don't care. It doesn't matter. It brings me pleasure.
Yes.
And
that's same okay with Albert. He just played it because it calmed him down. Yes. Yeah. Interesting. So these last 2 questions, we need your advice. What's a book that inspired you to behave or think differently?
I can't believe this book popped in my mind, but I read this is like 40 years ago. The Road Less Traveled by Scott M. Peck. This is a really old, it was on the bestsellers list for decades, but the opening sentence to this day, I've said it all my life. He starts with, life is difficult. And that where pain and suffering comes is when we try not to believe that, which actually I think is a Buddhist principle now, and that I've, further in my life, I've understood that. But I do feel like from an early age, I've accepted that fact. And so that book it was a helpful thing to know in my 30s when I started really in my life.
I'm going to add that one to my list. The last time I read it, I was in high school. It's been a while. That's a great reminder. Yes, I loved it too. I loved it then. Yeah, it really was moving.
Yeah, I don't know what I'd think of it today if I read it, but it just went, but I do remember that was probably the first self-help book kind of book, and probably one of the first that had come out in those days. I've read a million since then, but that one always did resonate quite a bit with me. And gave me a grounding, I think, that has been helpful in my life.
Yes, you and I are kindred spirits. We're book junkies. We love it.
Yeah.
So last bit of advice before we go into our bonus question. What's your favorite quote or motto and why?
I want a rising tide lifts all boats has been, and that we're collaborative, not competitive. But those two statements is what I say as part of the foundation of who the organization I've created. And I feel like the rising tide lifts all boats concept is just that together we're much stronger than we are by ourselves, and that competition is going to be there in anything that we do. But if we can see ourselves, we we will succeed only if we collaborate. We will never succeed if we become siloed and it becomes all for me. So that would be my grounding principle.
I can see why you pursued a master's in humanities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the quote behind your right shoulder. I'll read
Yeah.
it. Happiness is not so much in having as sharing. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And I mean, you hung that right there. I mean, I knew I liked you the first moment I met you on Zoom, because that was the first thing I saw. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just summarizes, that it's that idea that what we give is much more powerful than what we get back. I mean, it's that rising tide. I guess that's another way of saying, right? The rising tide lifts all boats. That this organ, like, in other words, to thinking about just in the work that I do. And so what's our member community? They're everybody, like, we have these amazing conferences and people, it's like a magical moment. People just, I think because it starts it from the top down, so our members aren't competing there. Everybody's so friendly. They'll say, "I can't believe how nice everybody is to each other." Well, I think it's because we want to be nice to each other, and if we keep that idea out that we're not competing with each other, that we're all helping each other, then it just permeates and it makes people feel so much safer. It's a safer world to live in if you feel like you're not competing with the person next to you. Is that
Well, absolutely. I love the work you're doing. Is there anything else you would like to add before we go into the last bonus question?
No, it's a delight. The other thing about my getting a degree in humanities, though, that what's interesting about that, and it's funny that you pulled that off my link because I don't talk about Wesleyan. I did that on my own in my 20s. I marvel now that I had the energy. I had a really successful job. When I got that job in advertising, I ended up being the first and the youngest woman sales manager in Connecticut doing that work, which was really kind of soul crushing in its own way because I was selling advertising. And I decided I wanted to get my master's in humanities, and I went at night to Wesleyan on my own, and it took me like a whole 5 or 6 years. And I loved it. I love those courses. I remember literary reflections of World War II. I mean, these amazing professors and that taught at Wesleyan, and I would go by myself. And anyway, it's just it kind of, now if I also look back, that ties back into that curiosity, I think, right? I was curious.
Yes.
I wanted to learn.
Love of learning, definitely.
Yeah.
And how great that wonderful university was in your backyard in Connecticut.
Right. My parents, we didn't come from money, and I could only afford a state school, and I couldn't afford a school like that. And so I was able to pay on my own for like one class at a time, and just slowly over time got that degree. And it's something that I cherish, but it's not something it's not, usually on my resume much. So
Bravo. Bravo. May we ask one last bonus legacy question? And it is, if a higher power, whatever you conceive it to be, if a higher power would let you do, be, have, see anything, what would that be?
gee.
And there's no limits. There's no geographical limits. There's no financial limits. There's no mindset limits, that you could literally do anything. You've got, yeah, you're a creator. You can create anything you want.
Oh, the first thing that comes up, I always laugh because I always think when I watch somebody like Tina Turner dance on stage, or I watch a tennis pro, at Wimbledon, or I watch a basketball player, I always think, I wish that I could step into their body for like 20 minutes and just experience that. I mean, I guess so. I would love to have the ability to know what it feels like to be like, I don't know, Bono singing to the masses on stage, like, or to be a speed. I guess it's speed in a way too, because I love speed, but like a skier skiing at the highest rate of speed in control down a mountain. So that sounds crazy, right? But that was a first thought that I came. If I could just step into another person's body and just experience what they get to experience, would be interesting.
I love it. We're kindred spirits there. I don't know if you saw the 100th performance of Billy Joel on CBS just recently. He's in his 70s now, and they showed it to us live from Madison Square Garden. Here's a man in his 70s doing what he loves. And I actually got a little choked up at the finale when he played Piano Man. Everyone was on their feet singing every word of the song. I mean, it was he composed it. He was playing it on the piano and blowing into that harmonica, and he was singing, and the band was on fire. I mean, it was electric. And I actually lost my composure. I was like, here is a man who is doing the great work of his life. I wonder what that feels like. And when he stood up, all he did was put his hand on his heart.
Mm.
And I was like, you are that good. Wow, you are doing the great work of your life. You are loving what you do. And when you love what you do, you share it, I mean, look what happens. I mean, every phone light was on in the entire stadium. It was awesome. Yeah.
Right. That's what I know. That's what I think that another thought I had when you asked that question was, could I float above the world and see, I picture like this web of connection, right? And can I believe that there's a web of connection. I say that, but it would be fascinating to see the energetic connection, because I do believe there's energy. I mean, my husband jokes it's like living a house of the spirits, but I don't really explore that much. And I'm sure many people that are listening have had these experiences. But if somebody hadn't thought I've been 5 years and suddenly the phone will ring like 20 minutes later and they've texted me or something, right? I mean, there's something there is an energy field, I believe, of some sort. And that'd also be really cool to be able to like float above the universe and see that, so that it's confirmation of what you kind of know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you don't mind me saying, when we first met, that I was feeling that energy from you in terms of the work that you're doing. And I really think this is inspirational to others to pursue the great work of their life. Because when you pursue the great work of your life, that's the game, right? That is the game. There is no other game. Do that, be fulfilled, have impact.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be forming a new organization that nobody else did. That's also right to help people understand. Even if it's just something you're doing on your own in your backyard, planting a pretty garden so that somebody walks by can see, all of that could be your greatest work, right? So and to help people realize that we all have a story to tell. We all have a gift to share. And it's not measured by, there's no measurement of what makes it. Billy Joel's the extreme, right? And then there's, all the way down to the simplest act of kindness that you can do, right? So. Yeah.
Well said, Cathi. What a pleasure. This has been a wonderful interview. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your gifts. And maybe we'll come back in a year or so and do take 2.
Oh, good. I hope so.
All right. Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, Cathi Nelson, The Photo Managers, found online at thephotomanagers.com.